Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here. It's Monday morning. Lots of interesting baseball played this weekend. And Blake, at this point, can anybody stop Tennessee? The Vols just rolled to another series win. I shouldn't say rolled, because a couple games were close. Tennessee was down, 4-0 in the seventh, had been no hit, and gets an extra inning win in Gainesville. Saturday's game was close, too. Friday's was more of a blowout. But I don't ever recall seeing an SEC team dominate the way Tennessee has.
Yeah, probably not a big surprise at this point. Like you said, I think we talked about it going into the weekend, looking at their schedule, and said maybe Florida gets one, but you're never betting on Tennessee losing a series at this point. And pretty much you're expecting a sweep, with just the thought that maybe a team can get a win somewhere. But yeah, the way they came back in the game on Sunday, just not going to beat them right now. Like we said, they had that little stretch a couple weeks ago, where they lose 2 games, but here they are, 37-3, and really the rest of the schedule sets up. I don't want to say perfectly, but it's set up pretty well the rest of the way in terms of playing their 2 toughest series at home. So really good. 40 games in, they've only lost 3 of them, and I just don't. No, there's no one that's going to stop them at this point.
Yeah, I'm looking and playing the what would it take for them not to be the number 1 national seed game. Blake, I think even if they go 500 in the league the rest of the way, which is 4-4, and by the way, that schedule is Auburn at home, Kentucky on the road, Georgia at home, State on the road. Say that ends up being what? 25-5. Even at that point, they're still the number 1 national seed. They could face plant in Hoover, I think, and I still don't know who's ahead of them at that point.
Yeah, I don't think they're losing more than 2 games the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I don't think they are either. For the record, I'm just saying that's where they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been years where Oregon State had a year or 2 like this, although that's in the Pac-12, which I don't think is usually as tough as the SEC, but I just can't remember a team that has lapped the field to the extent that this one has.
Yeah, it's been impressive, and like you said, just when you think they're going to lose one on Sunday, they rally, and that doesn't happen. So they just, they just don't lose games right now, and they haven't done it most of the season. So it's been impressive.
No Chase Dolander, no problem. Blake Tidwell steps in on Saturday, and they just keep going. The battle for second did get a little more interesting because we had our series of the week. That was A&M hosting Arkansas, and I felt like A&M had a good chance, and it did win that series. You've got right now just a log jam behind Arkansas. You've got Arkansas at 12-6, and Arkansas's got, Ole Miss at Auburn, Vandy at home, and Alabama on the road. So I guess that's neither an easy nor a brutally tough schedule. You really would like to have Vandy at home rather than on the road, and Arkansas got that. Alabama and Auburn on the road, neither of those will be easy. Ole Miss just depends on the frame of mind Ole Miss is in after losing the last 2, and basically, I think seeing its postseason chances probably flushed down the toilet. Ole Miss's remaining schedule after Arkansas is Missouri at home, LSU on the road, A&M at home. So I think that was one of the weekend's bigger events, was that and what it meant for State. We'll get to that in a minute. But you got Arkansas sitting there at 12-6, also firmly in national seed territory. Georgia took 2 or 3 at Alabama. Trying to rank these teams right now really hard. If you're asking me who I think is best, I'd probably go Tennessee, Arkansas, Vandy. But Vandy's resume is not there with the rest of them. I keep thinking Georgia's due to take a fall. That hasn't happened yet. And, by the way, they got Jonathan Cannon back. He threw 5 perfect innings. So Georgia's a really interesting team. got the upper hand on finishing second in the East. I mean, right now, what you're looking at is the race for the top 4. Tennessee's going to be there. These are the teams that get the 2 byes. Arkansas, I'm shocked if Arkansas is not there. Then you got Auburn and Georgia at 11 and 7, LSU A&M at 10 and 8. Parity's been the story in the league outside of Tennessee so far, and I think that makes the race to the finish line in the regular season really interesting.
Yeah, I feel like you guys, talked a lot about this year, just those teams that are. It's just been that way, Tennessee and Arkansas, and then it's, how does everything unfold beyond that? And after Vanderbilt started slipping a little bit, and then it got more interesting, like you said, whether it's Georgia, who I think we picked Alabama to win that series, but Georgia came out and it's pretty impressive, to get those first 2 wins and take care of business, and then beyond that, teams like Auburn and you talked about A&M and even Alabama still kind of in that range now. Of course LSU. So yeah, I mean it's I think it's gonna be interesting these final several weeks just to kind of figure out, all right, which of these teams are gonna separate themselves, from the others, and again, whether is that going to be Auburn, is it going to be Georgia? I think like you, I think Vanderbilt probably has a pretty good chance to have a strong finish and obviously be in that conversation with everyone else. And like you said, LSU's playing well, and yeah, just a lot of different things. But there's so many teams that are kind of in that group right now that you're just trying to see. I mean, because again, even teams have moved closer to Arkansas at this point after the A&M series. So yeah, it's Tennessee. It's clearly, ahead of everyone. I think Arkansas is right there, and then it's just trying to figure out, all right, kind of who's going to make the moves, and that's where we've seen teams like A&M and Georgia, I think specifically, start making more of those moves recently. So
Auburn had a really good weekend. I know people are going to say it's South Carolina, but there's no easy series wins in this league. Joseph Gonzalez, again, was tremendous on Saturday. He's just been money for them in that role. They hit enough. Butch Thompson's done a really good job with that team, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, they were – where did we pick them? I'm trying to remember where –
we picked them 6th, and that was looking at the schedule. I had them in Alabama as a coin flip. Alabama's had a better season than we thought, too. I mean, here's the crazy thing. Ole Miss and State were top 5 teams, top 6 teams nationally going into the season by most of the pollsters. That may be your last 2 place teams in the West, which nobody would have seen that coming.
Yeah, Auburn, like you said, you sort of could see it with them, and they got off to the strong start, and then it's just, as always, it's once you get into SEC play, it's all right, how do things hold up from there? But they had that big stretch, I guess it was, where was it they? I mean, really, it was like going from A&M to LSU to Vanderbilt and winning all 3 of those series. I think that's where you're like, all right, well now. This kind of is what they are, and then even to get a sweep against South Carolina, I think it's just I mean they have played really well, and it does make the series against Tennessee more interesting. Certainly, you wouldn't be surprised if Auburn takes a game from Tennessee. Like we said, you're not going to pick Tennessee to lose that, but yeah, I mean the remaining schedule with Tennessee, Arkansas coming up next. I mean I mean if you can, let's say if you win the Arkansas series or take a game from Tennessee in there too. Like, yeah, you're setting yourself up to be in a good spot, which they've already done, now just the way they played over the past, month or so. And yeah, so Auburn's sitting in a pretty nice spot right now.
One thing that shocked me a little bit, I thought Mississippi State winning 2 out of 3 at Ole Miss would be a bigger RPI bump. I think State was 81 going into the weekend and is now 76. And I guess that's because Ole Miss is 64 in the RPI, which Ole Miss is a better team than that. But that's not what the RPI thinks. But that's interesting because now State is at 8 and 10. I still don't think they're a tournament team if you pick the field today because out of conference they've really struggled. But, now they've got series wins over Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, although all those 2 out of 3. The thing that killed them was getting swept against LSU. But Road trip to Missouri this weekend. State didn't play that well on the road, but that's one where they can get 2 out of 3. Then they host Florida. We'll talk about the Gators in a minute, but Florida's really got some work to do to get to the tournament. It's makeable. Then, closing with the series at A&M and Tennessee. State had better do some work the next 2 weekends, and I will be interested to see, even if it does it get enough of an RPI bump to start getting bubble discussion? I mean, that probably depends on, even if it wins a series, 6-0 versus 4-2. It may just depend on how many they win here. I mean, I'm sure it does, but I thought State would come out of the weekend with a bigger RPI bump than it got, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, like you said, they need to do some of their work here up front over the next couple weeks because, you as of now, I mean, you'd expect them to lose the A&M and Tennessee series. Just a matter of, is it a sweep? Is it a, 2-1? However you want to look at it. But, yeah, so I think the Missouri and Florida series, like you said, I mean, you love to get the sweep against Missouri, even though it's on the road. They haven't played well on the road, but then take 2 or 3, at least from Florida. That would set them up, like you said. It'll be interesting from a numbers standpoint to see where they're at that point going into the May 13 series with Texas A&M. But yeah, it's I think it's you never know. Like we said, anytime any teams go on the road in this league, you never know. And even though you would expect probably Mississippi State to go in and be able to take at least 2 or 3 from Missouri, you just never know. So, yeah, but it's a big week for them, even though, again, it's not like they're going against a great team, but from where they stand right now and needing to make up some ground, it's every week's important now for them. So
Florida did not have Hunter Barco this weekend. I'm not going to be shocked if they don't have him the rest of the year. I'd be interested to see how that forearm issue develops. But really could have used one against Tennessee. That would have made a lot of difference, I think. Now here's Florida at 6-12. Remaining series: Kentucky at home, at State, at Missouri, South Carolina at home. Number 2 strength of schedule in the country right now. That'll probably take a little bit of a hit with those 4 series. But the flip side of that is opportunity for wins. Because I think if Florida gets to 13 with that strength of schedule, with the series win, let's see, they've got one over Arkansas. That helps. They got one at Alabama. So they need to go, 7-5 in the last 12 to get to 13-17. That'd probably put them on the bubble. 14-16, I think, gets them in. That requires 8-4. It'd be interesting to see if they've got that left in the tank, because here's how you can break that down. Let's say they lose both road series. They're not very good on the road. That's 2-4. They then have to sweep Kentucky and South Carolina at home, which is really tough. So Florida's going to be very interesting to see how the tournament committee looks at them if they get themselves onto the bubble. And there's some work to get there, I think, after this weekend. I think everybody had them in the tournament last weekend, but 6-12 in the SEC, you could see that as a possibility heading into the Tennessee series. That's now a reality. And I'm thinking that when you see tournament projections coming out this week, that's probably going to keep them out, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I may look back on that Sunday game and be like, boy, if we just would have got that one right. Because, we were in such a good spot, and it's like we just win that game. Even though you don't win the series, you just win that one game, and how much of a difference that could make eventually. But like you said, I mean, the toughest part of their schedule is out of the way. Now it's just, you're down to your final 12 games here, and just hoping that you can be in a position to, and like I said too, I mean, they get a game against Florida State in there as well, but it's just like, yeah, I just don't think you know what to expect from Florida at this point. It's hard to know, probably. Just kind of like you said, I mean, even a series like the one against Mississippi State, that's very interesting for both teams, and yeah, so if it's like if you had to take a guess right now, like what they're going to finish just in the SEC games, I have no idea what you would even say. You would assume they probably win the series against Kentucky. Mississippi State, I think, it's coin toss. At Missouri, you would think Florida probably wins that series maybe. And South Carolina, probably favored to win that series too. But it's just, I don't know. I think they're really hard to figure the rest of the way.
Let's look at it from the top. Tennessee's going to be a national seed. It's almost a 100% chance at this point. Arkansas, better than average chance to get there. I'll be interested to see how everybody sizes up Auburn this week, because Auburn's 16 in the RPI as of this morning. That puts it right in hosting range, 11-7 in the league. 25-12 overall? To me, it's probably a hosting resume. I'd have to look at their out of conference. And let's see what Auburn did there. It seemed like forever ago since they played the non-conference. Yeah, Auburn had that early season State Farm showdown thing against the Big 12 where it won 2 of 3, including Texas Tech. Lost to Oklahoma, won't really hurt. Took 2 out of 3 against Yale. Got a midweek game from UAB. Beat a bad Rhode Island team. Lost a series to MTSU, which is 51 RPI, so that's not terrible. So I don't see anything there that really moves the needle in a bad direction. It'll be interesting to see if Auburn starts getting momentum with D1 and BA in terms of hosting this week, because I can certainly see it. Georgia's going to host at this point. Again, I think that Georgia's probably not as good as the record, and I'm concerned about the pitching, but how good you are in resume are two different conversations. Georgia's absolutely there at this point. In fact, Georgia is what? Against Quad 1. I know it's really good. I'm clicking on the record here. Yeah, Georgia 12-8 against Quad 1. Strength of schedule is going to be there. So right now you're going to have Tennessee, Arkansas, Georgia hosting. I think Auburn's got a chance to climb in there this week. LSU, I've continued to say I think LSU's better than people are giving it credit for being. LSU 18 RPI this morning, 13 strength of schedule, 27-12 overall. Not a lot of marquee series wins. I think LSU's a team that's going to be putting itself right there on the edge. I don't know that they're going to be there yet in the projections, but that series with Georgia this weekend in Baton Rouge is going to be huge. Win a series on the road at Alabama or Vandy. That helps LSU. So LSU's putting itself in position. A&M a really interesting team. And the schedule gets easier after Vandy this weekend. That one's in Nashville. But series wins against Georgia, Arkansas, LSU. I could see A&M, if it can win the series at Vandy this weekend. I think A&M is a hosting team at that point. And then I'm not going to say you can cruise because nothing in this league is easy, but finishing with South Carolina and State at home and Ole Miss on the road. Alabama, I think, still gets in the tournament today. Closes at South Carolina, LSU at Auburn, Arkansas. That's going to be really tough. So Alabama needs to keep, I just think, get to 14 and 16 and they get in. Florida we talked about. State we talked about. At this point, man, it's crazy to look at Ole Miss and think that the Rebels are just about dead and buried in terms of the NCAA tournament, and we're not even to May. But that's kind of how it looks, Blake.
Yeah, I was going to say, I started looking at them as you were talking about the other teams, and I just don't, it's like, again, why would your expectations be different than what you've seen to this point? And unless you just expect just a miraculous finish here, which the way they played, I just don't know how you would predict that. Yeah, I just don't see it. Because again, as we said, we go to Arkansas, they still got to go to LSU, still got A&M. They got the series with Missouri in there too, but it's just, yeah, I just don't. I don't see enough wins there again, unless they just completely figure it out after this Mississippi State series, and all of a sudden they just start playing better than they have all season. But as things stand right now, I don't really see the path there. So,
another thing that's hard to figure out is who gets left out in Hoover. Missouri right now 5-13 would be one of the two. Then you got Ole Miss, Kentucky, South Carolina, all at 6-12. Carolina and Kentucky play each other, so that's going to lend some clarity if it ends up a head-to-head between those teams, barring a rainout. Kentucky's lost a couple of starting pitchers, and that really hurts. But Kentucky hung in with Vandy all weekend, Blake. Bullpen was really good. That's one that Kentucky really needed but couldn't get. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not even going to bother to try to project tiebreakers and stuff. But I think that's the other thing to watch is who gets left out of Hoover. And right now, well, no, Florida at 6-12 also. So it's basically a 5-team race for 3 spots, assuming that State has sort of played its way off the bubble at 8-10 for Hoover.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of, you look at where things stand as of now. But as we've mentioned, I mean, there's still a lot that can change, but based on, 4 series being left. But it's, as I mentioned, like even like I mentioned with Florida, Ole Miss, teams like that, I just have no idea what to expect from these teams as we go down the stretch here. So, you know, you could say it one way, and then all of a sudden, one of these teams finds its rhythm and just completely changes everything. But right now, it's like I don't know what to expect from that group when, like you mentioned, going for basically 5 teams, going for 3 spots now. So.
Well, Ole Miss has got the additional thing of Mike Bianco job pressure.
Yeah, that's always important. So
yeah, and I don't know if I was gonna say I don't know if Mark Kingston joins him in that bunch or not, because that program really since Ray Tanner left has just not been what it was, and not really that close.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it probably. I mean, like I said, that's where how they finish could certainly come into play. Which again, I have no idea how they would finish either, right? Because I mean, they've got Alabama, A&M, Florida, still Kentucky. So, man, there's still a long way to go. Even though you said the tournament's basically a month away, but it still feels like it's just a long way to go based on how many games that are still left to be played. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if not Nick Mingione. I don't think he's losing his job. He's done a pretty good job at Kentucky. I don't know if Steve Beazer, if there's a change there at Missouri, because Missouri, since it's been in the SEC, has not made the NCAA tournament. Now, my feeling is I thought Missouri deserved it a time or two where it didn't get it, but interesting dynamics at the bottom of the league. And again, the thing that I've reminded people, any of these teams can beat anybody any given week. Kentucky's done it to Georgia and TCU in a series. South Carolina's beaten Vandy and Texas in a series, and Ole Miss. So, This is going to be one of those, like, keep your scratch paper handy as you do the tiebreakers in the next few weeks. Because I think you're going to have drama everywhere. Like, the only thing that's going to not have drama at this point is Tennessee. Although every series Tennessee plays, there's drama for different reasons. But in terms of how's this going to play out, I mean, I think that really, I feel like barring something crazy, Arkansas is going to be a host, if not a national seed. Georgia's getting there with a couple more series of wins, just that RPI. But the schedule, boy, LSU and Tennessee on the road, sandwiched with Vanderbilt in Athens. That's not a gimme by any stretch. I feel like really basically, Blake, Tennessee's a lock to get a national seed. I feel like Arkansas is not a lock to host, but it's getting really close. And I think a national seed, I'd give them, again, better than 50-50 chance. Everything else up in the air.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's just, like you said, I mean, there is a lot still to be determined. And that's like we mentioned, like time-wise, it's like, all right, well, there's only a month left. But it's like, in baseball terms, like that's a long time because that's still a lot of games that have to be played. And we talked about how kind of bunched together different groups are, whether it's those teams that are, behind Tennessee, teams at the bottom, how bunched up they are, and knowing that I mean, like we said, knowing that anyone really can, aside from probably Tennessee, I mean, they've been so dominant that you're just not expecting, um, you know, just anyone to beat them. I think if it's going to be Auburn, sure, could see Auburn take a game from Tennessee, probably the way they've been playing, but you're probably not expecting a team at the bottom to beat Tennessee or anything like that. But everything else just seems like it's pretty much fair game at this point, and a lot of different scenarios they could play out. So I'm glad I'm not doing the tiebreakers on anything right now because it'd be a mess. So
Yeah, I think Tennessee and Arkansas are going to make the tournament. Auburn is 11-7. I think the spot you want to get to generally is 14. 14 and 16 in the SEC usually gets you in. So Auburn really just needs to win 3 games between Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky. So Auburn getting really close. Georgia, same boat to get to 14. Although, again, brutal schedule, the toughest of anybody remaining, but closing with Missouri at home certainly helps. Vandy got some work to do. Vandy, I think, needs to get 5 out of 12 against A&M, Georgia, Arkansas, LSU. I'll be shocked if Vanderbilt doesn't do that. Although, again, a tough schedule. LSU, kind of same boat, sitting there with, 10 wins. Just go 1-2 each of the last 4 series, and they're in. A&M, same thing. Alabama, a little dicier because the midweek and out of conference hasn't been very good, and the schedule is, Alabama may have the toughest remaining schedule. Probably not, but it's close. Again, with road trips to Carolina and Auburn and LSU and Arkansas. Alabama is going to have some work to do, but being 9-9 at this point helps. Florida, we talked about. State, we talked about. So I think right now you've got 8 teams in pretty good shape. Florida, again, with the schedule easing up and finding a Sunday guy, has got a shot to make its way. State's got an uphill climb with the RPI. But I think, what do we put the under on at tournament teams right now? 8.5, probably?
yeah, I think that's probably right.
Yeah. I don't think it's any less than 8. Could be, depending on Alabama, but that's where we are.
It'll be fun. Like I said, it's always fun, like just this time of year, knowing that all this stuff is in play now, heading into these final several series. But especially this year, just because I think we meant just because of the records and kind of where teams are at right now, and you're seeing some teams heading in the right direction, as always. There are teams heading in the wrong direction, and everyone's still chasing the team at the top that's having on a way to a historic season. So yeah, it's been a season, and still a long way to go in terms of trying to figure out how this is all going to unfold and where teams are going to land heading into Hoover. So
yeah, I mean, story even like I said, Tennessee is the one thing that seems settled, but now you're seeing Tennessee chase that 26-3 Vandy put up in 13. Barring a rain out, which Vanderbilt got a game rained out that year, 27-3 seems doable, if almost not, I hate to say probable because it's baseball, but man, the way they've dominated, Blake.
So I don't think they're losing more than 2.
Yeah.
If that. I think that's that. If we do an over/under, if it's 2, I'm going under, to be honest. Yeah, I just think that's just what you've seen to this point. Because again, it's not like we have a small sample size anymore. They played 40 games now, and SEC games they played 18, and that's enough, for me, based on what I've seen, to tell you that I just have a hard time thinking they're going to lose more than a couple. It is baseball, and we always say that. There's a lot more.
But it's baseball with them has been out the window because the margins of victory have been so large. Yeah. Like it's baseball almost doesn't apply to them. They're winning by so much.
Yeah, I think set the over under 2, take the under. That's what I would say.
That's where I am too. All right, any parting thoughts?
Nope. Obviously, have it all covered over on the website as well. We've done some football stuff here recently. You can check that out. Draft coming up this week, and we did. I know Blaine was on to do little early look at the SEC East. I know you guys will do one for the West at some point, and so all kinds of stuff going on. Don't
Yeah.
worry, basketball, people still transferring. We're almost to 1,500. So Tennessee had a nice pickup over the weekend. Um, Key from Indiana State, good player.
Yeah.
So one of 1,000 that are out there in terms of transfers in basketball. So a lot of stuff happening. So yeah, check the website. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. All that good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Plenty more content coming later this week. Hit that subscribe button. If you haven't yet, we appreciate you watching. We'll see you soon.